to talk a little bit about playgrounds. Playgrounds are one of those things that we all know we need to have in a program, but we're not entirely sure why, maybe. Or you may be very clear on why, but you're not real clear on what you should have. So let's talk about it a little bit. You want to have use zones, which are basically the outdoor equivalent of learning centers. Just like inside, we want to make sure that we have areas for people who don't really feel like being social right now. Areas where one or two children can play by themselves quietly. You also want areas where it's real obvious what you're supposed to do. Inside, we end up having problems with circle time rugs and other areas that look very similar to wrestling rings. Children know what wrestling rings are for. It's almost as if it's in their genetic code. So if there's a large open area, especially if it's padded, then obviously this is where we roughhouse. Outside, you have similar things. If there is a large grassy area that's about 50 to 100 yards long, that's obviously where you run around and you play chase games. So if the only area you have that's open like that is concrete or asphalt, you're going to end up with a lot more injuries. So think about what you can do to address those issues. Inside, we look for those wrestling rings, and we also look for race tracks. Areas that have a straight line of vision, so they look exactly like a 50-yard dash. Outside, the problem is not so much that we're telling them to do gross motor things that aren't appropriate, but it's that we're not telling them where the edges of those gross motor things are. So when you're designing a playground or when you're revising a playground, make sure that you have ways to indicate where the end of a certain use zone is. Haven't defined use zone yet. Let me think about it. It's like centers. I said that before. So what's the block center equivalent on your playground? Well, inside, if you had a block center, you probably have a carpet or other something to dampen the noise underneath where you're going to have those blocks built. And you probably have marked the edge of it with bookshelves and perhaps a wall. Out on the playground, it's a little harder to use bookshelves to mark the end of a center or a use zone. So instead we use things like landscape timbers, which hopefully you've used the pressure treated, not the arsenic treated pressure. Hopefully you've used the pressure treated, not the arsenic treated landscape timbers. We don't really want arsenic in the children. Or perhaps with concrete edging, or even sometimes just sidewalks to mark this is where you walk and this is where you climb on a climbing structure, or where you run or ride your bike or use the swing set. There are specific activities that you're going to want on your playground. You're going to want someplace for running. We talked about that already, because chase games are going to happen, and you have two choices. You can provide a playground where that is set up, or you can just have a playground that is covered with pea gravel and have children who are less successful in their chase games. It's not going to stop the chase games. They're developmentally required. So what it's going to do is make it more likely that children are going to get hurt by flying pea gravel. Okay, so think about, where are the children going to run? Are you going to have tricycles or push cars or other types of push me, pull me materials? If so, how is that designated? Perhaps that's on your concrete or on crushed granite. Having a path sometimes is a good way to handle that goes around your program. Is there a designated storage area? Inside in our learning centers, you have those shelves right there that you used as demarcation for the edge of the center, where you can put the manipulatives back on the shelf. Outside, it's a little harder. Where exactly Do you put the bikes when you're done with them? Make sure you have a storage area near where the bikes are going to be used so that the children can put them back. Do you have an area for digging and sorting? Sandcastles are great. If you don't have sandcastles, you may have pea gravel that the children want to sort and they have to find that pink crystal. All of the fall surfaces offer these types of opportunities. So where does the digging happen? And where is the storage for those digging utensils, for the shovels and the buckets? Climbing. Children need to climb. Where does the climbing happen? And are you using tires to mark the end of that climbing structure? Are you using those landscape timbers? Are you using manufactured edging? Are you using concrete? How are you marking the end of that area? If you haven't seen tires used as demarcation for the edge of a play zone, let me just talk about that a little bit. Tires can be used either horizontally, so placed like this with holes drilled in the bottom for drainage and filled in with sand or other surface so that it keeps things from eroding. They meet this 3 to 6 inch depth that you need to have on your fall surface, so it's also pretty easy to tell, do I need to add new fall surfacing? The other way is to put it in vertically. When you put it in vertically, you're going to have to dig the tire down so that you only see about half of it. The other half is going to be submerged below, as you would expect. And again, there's going to be a hole drilled down here at the bottom, or a couple of them for drainage, so that you don't have mosquito issues. And then you end up with several of these tires, one after the other, and you can end up with something that looks kind of like an inchworm or something like that, which is fun for the children to climb on and things like that, but it also makes a nice barrier to demark the edge of a play zone. So make sure that you have quiet areas, areas for small groups, areas for that running, and areas for climbing, and that it's easy to tell where all those things are going to happen on your playground. Hello.
I couldn't figure out what you were... Be sure to get this.
What is our chicken wire gap?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's better than it was, but that's not very hard to do.
Well, the